Welcome back, everyone. We'll be discussing how to turn Africa's youth potential into entrepreneurial growth. As you know, we live on the world's youngest continent with a median age of 18 years old. We've estimated that we'll need about 1 billion jobs by the end of the century for the young people that are to come. So we're going to get right into it. My first question will be to you, Owen. Africa's youth are often described as the continent's greatest assets, yet many remain unemployed or underemployed. What are we missing in turning demographics into dividends?
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and good morning, everyone. What we're missing, in a single word, is alignment. We have so many opportunities on the continent. However, those that should take charge or take advantage of these opportunities are far too often left behind, left out of the discussions, are unable to access the opportunities that exist. You might say, why aren't they able to access the opportunities? For the vibrant youth that we have in Africa, and we are very vibrant, you only need to spend like 5 minutes on social media to see just how vibrant and creative African youths are. Something happens in 30 seconds, 1 minute, we see skits all over the place, interpretation. But what we're finding is that our educational level is still relatively low compared to what the needs are. So there's a skill gap that exists. I am Group CEO of Transcorp. In Transcorp, we employ about 6,000 people. As I talk to you now, I still have about 250 vacancies in my group. In a country that has over 200 million people, of that 200, 80% are youths. So why then do I have that? Why then do I have that vacancy? So there's that mismatch, and we need to focus on upskilling our African youths if we're going to be able to take advantage of the jobs that are coming up on the continent. 2, there's a bit of an over-reliance on formal employment versus people going out to create their own jobs. Employment in the English dictionary is a simple word, it means use. I'm employing my skills means I'm using my skills. How do we activate and catalyze people to use those skills? And this is where we also need to come in to say, what's the gap? What's the need? What's the encouragement? African youths, by the way, I believe I'm one of them. One thing that is also missing, and it's hope. Hope, finding somebody to believe in you, that indeed you can do it, and give you that chance. And that's why for us in our group, we are so keen on, we call it democratization of luck. So you should not, by accident of birth, have an advantage over the other person who also by accident of birth perhaps came out of a lower income household. But when you find that you have opportunities that are leveled, then you see that more and more people are able to get on the have access to the table, have access to sharing their ideas, and also be able to contribute. I, for one, am one of those people who came from the other side of the divide, and thank God, due to leveled opportunities, here I am today.
Thank you. It is alarming that the most populous country on the continent you've got a skills gap. There are people that need jobs, but you're unable to fill the vacancies because the skills aren't there. And as many of us know, Nigeria will have the 3rd most populous country in the world by 2050. So jobs are what's needed. From your vantage point, Vera, what single barrier limits youth-led entrepreneurship today? Is it skills, as Owen has mentioned, or is it finance, policy, or markets?
First of all, thank you, and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at the Bloomberg Africa Summit. I think it's difficult to talk about one, but if one were to pick one, it will be policy. Because essentially, policy unlocks skills development, policy unlocks finance, and policy unlocks actually the youth eventually being able to strive. And let me take one example, I think, that has been running through the course of today. And I come from Cameroon. And we play soccer. So, right, this is an employment opportunity today on the continent, the sports field. We see tons of young Africans going abroad, earning salaries that their parents will not earn in generations to come. But we don't have the right infrastructure to make that work. We don't have the right infrastructure. I think plug for AFCON, which is about to happen in a few weeks. All Africa will be watching soccer and hoping that their countries, Nigeria, Cameroon, South Africa, of course, one of us is going to win. It's going to be a lot of young kids on that field. Nobody to manage their careers, nobody to tell them what to do, nobody to tell them that you have to stay in school so that after that you can do better. And so there's a huge big employment in the creatives, in the arts, in the sports, where we don't do anything. It's policy. If you look at the internet, I think we just finished talking about AI here. Yes. $500 billion, $1 trillion in the United States being invested. On the continent, if you try to turn on Google, it takes you 5 minutes for it to open up. You cannot compete. So even if 90% of our jobs are small and medium enterprises, they are the youth. They cannot compete even though we have the excellence, we have the expertise. Some of the youth have some of the best skills, right? But if policy does not allow for the internet to be fast, for it to be accessible, for it to be affordable, for the cables to work, then it will not be able to work, I think, efficiently. So it always starts with policy. Policy also does not allow the financing to happen effectively. And so if the young cannot have access to affordable financing, even though across the world, 7 out of every 10 businesses that start would fail, and I'm sure you know this better than anybody else, I think on the continent we can't even start because we don't have the resources because they're too expensive. That's, again, policy. So I think if you can fix the policy angle, you begin to fix each of these individual areas in which you can address the issues. And finally, it's the skills. We need to reform our education sector across the continent. We need to make sure that STEM is not a good to have. It is a must have. It is a must start. It is a must have. Now we have in many countries STEM, okay, well, we're going to pick 10 kids and we're going to put them at STEM. Everybody should be doing STEM. And I think there are now methods, large language models, I think we talked about it earlier today, which can be translated into local languages. Many of the countries on the continent already have IT young kids, startups that are already translating. I think the beautiful thing about today is the democratization of information, the ability for any young kid to be able to know and understand and do what they want. But if you can translate, all of Google DNA as they have done, all the DNA analysis into Kiswahili, it means that a scientist in Kenya, a young 15-year-old in Kenya who wants to study chemistry or biology or engineering, can do that work in their local language much faster, much quicker, and innovate. And I think that's the future for the continent, and we must get there, and we must get there quickly.
Thanks for that, Vera. James, I'll turn to you. I've had the privilege of having first-hand experience of witnessing what the Equity Foundation does in terms of empowering young people, whether skills, education, and equipping them to be entrepreneurs. Can you tell us more about what the foundation is doing in that area?
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And it's simply because of what Vera has said. The biggest challenge in our continent is the relevance of education to the demands of the market. And so the foundation has been trying to match the knowledge, education with the demands of the market. And it starts with looking at, can we set an example of the kind of education? But because we can't change the curricula of schools, what we did is to create a mentoring and coaching program. So far, we have 60,000 kids that we have been able to pass through secondary education through scholarships. But because of the mentoring and coaching program, we have a transition rate to university of 86% against a 26% national average. So you can see when you empower using the right tools, then you have better outcomes. Out of the 39,000 who have gone to university, 1,800 have done medicine. And you can see what we have then said is these are medics. How can we get them to the market? And so we registered the Equity Africa Foundation as a franchise for medicine. And today they have been able to set 147 medical centers who last year saw 4.3 million patients. So you can see you link and all that you need to do. We're now doing the same for agriculture. Those who did agricultural courses, can we set for them a franchise that deals with agro processing, agro inputs, so that you match the needs with the skills and the competence. But I think what really makes the foundation tick is the financing. Because for those who have finished school, together with MasterCard Foundation, we thought of empowering them or capacitating them with the skills that the market requires, and then fund them. And under the program called Young Africa Work, we have been able to train 680,000 young people and given them loans of $4.8 billion US, and they have created 2.6 million jobs. But brainly, they are tied together. So it is that ability to bring skills and finance together. The biggest challenge, if I may add, has been where African financial system doesn't finance talent. And the reason why Equity Foundation has been able to do that is because of using blended finance. MasterCard Foundation comes in and say, you give them a credit, but we share the credit risk. So they give us a credit risk guarantee, and then they say, beyond that, we'll capacitate them and de-risk them through a 11-week training program on entrepreneurship. So you can see tools are there, but we haven't been able to match these tools to direct human capital to the opportunities in the marketplace.
Thank you for that, James. My next question is to you, Owen. How can large companies such as Transcorp better integrate young entrepreneurs into their supply chains?
All right, thank you. In responding, I'm going to go beyond just my own group, Transcorp. So Transcorp, we're part of a broader family, Heirs Holdings, that's my core investor. We have, about 10 years ago, James knows our foundation, through the Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Program, which is the flagship program of Mr. Tony Elumelu, we looked at the challenge of youth and decided where is the opportunity in it. And we launched a $100 million entrepreneurship program where we set out to say over a period of 10 years, we want to identify, mentor, train, and fund 10,000 African entrepreneurs. We've completed that, by the way. But what's most critical is when you put your money where your mouth is, people believe you, and people would support you. Because what is interesting is, contrary to a lot of the vibe of noise you hear, a lot of people outside of Africa want Africa to succeed. And we've seen, like you just mentioned, MasterCard working with you to de-risk. We've seen DFIs come in to invest on the continent to promote African entrepreneurs. And working with other companies, we've actually gone beyond 24,000. Now, back to Transcorp. We have a big hotel, for those who are familiar with our country, the Transcorp Hilton in Abuja. Way before it became more popular to do, we started driving the backward integration and stimulating entrepreneurship through creating a level platform for suppliers to come in. Nigeria is hugely import dependent, but because of our deliberate strategy of having local supply, we have been driving an import substitution for several years. So we work with the entrepreneurs to give them that support. In some cases, we do provide funding. So you're able to provide supply. So we're there at the hotel, your goods are coming, your crops, your products. We are ready to buy because we have millions of people that walk through our doors annually. We also have programs that we do for women, very specific. I don't think it will be possible to have a woman as a leader and then not have women-specific program. We have the Business Entrepreneurship Program for women, where we have very direct upskilling opportunities, and we provide funding so that when they are done with their training, they are able to go. You see, it's one thing for you to be trained, another thing for you to be trained by Transcorp, because Transcorp has a strong brand, and we go for that to extend that brand. And the communities within which we operate, for us, is a no-brainer. We do well, we do good. That's just our philosophy. And it's something that, see, you have a responsibility as a corporate to where you operate within. And if you actually do it, it drives sustainability in your business because, hey, you are creating a market for yourself. Just over the weekend, we graduated 75 entrepreneurs in one of our local communities. We've been training them for 6 months and then gone ahead to fund. We have a special quota for supplies that must come to us from the communities within which we operate in. So we are running multi-billion naira companies in our various communities, and we are creating employment through those channels. And this is separate from the grants that we provide, is separate from the mentorship opportunities that we provide. And even more recently, a very dear favorite of mine, we launched a program called the Intern X. And this is strictly for young people in the universities. I had to stop myself from calling them children. My second child just turned 21 today, and I'm sure they don't appreciate being called children. But young people, back to that concept of democratization of luck, we created the Intern X. And what it is, you just apply, and you're able to do your internship, 3 to 6 months internship in Transco. If you look at international schools, they have that. It's almost commonplace, having work experience. It's not the case in Nigeria. I can't speak for the other countries in Africa, but Nigeria is a significant proportion of Africa's population. And we've gone on to do that. And I go back to creation of hope. Once people believe that, somebody believes in me. And how does that belief? I don't literally have to walk up to you to tell you. The simple fact that I have on my platform how to be a vendor, and you go there, you can apply. I'm applying for a job. I need a mentor. It just lets you believe that you can do it, and there are corporations out there that can give you that leapfrog, especially with the Tony Elumelu Foundation. That first stage, look, with bankers want to lend where there's no risk. I'm sure I have a few bankers in the hall. I'm also an ex-banker. We don't like risk. Yeah, we say high risk, high return, but we prefer where the risk is managed. And through the foundation, we give people $5,000 for a proof of concept. Go and test your idea, and you have it, you've tested it, it's bankable, then we can go through other facilities, including our own bank, the United Bank for Africa, PLC.
Thanks, Owen. It's incredible to see the work that private sector companies are doing, like yourselves are doing through your foundations in order to turn our demographics into a dividend. Vera, I'll move on to you. Where do you think public policy can make the biggest difference? Do you think it will be regulations, infrastructure, or incentives?
That was the question for me. Listen, I think there's a few things that we could talk about. One of the things that is particularly important when we talk about youth and employment is, I think, a phenomenon that is happening today. And a big handicap for youth employment and actually for emergence is payment systems on the continent, is the impossibility to trade because it's so difficult. We're 54 countries. Moving across borders is impossible. But something is happening, and something is happening in the rest of the world that we have not yet focused on, which is the emergence of stablecoins. In Nigeria alone, it's $300 billion, globally on the continent now, $300 billion. I don't know. How many people have stablecoin? How many people have done a transaction in stablecoin? There you are. The numbers are going up and the hands are going up. And there's going to be many more. 300 billion, 25 million Africans already transacting on that platform. It's amazing. It's perfect. Because for the youth, when policy does not work and inflation is too high, it's very difficult to start a business. Because the day you quote your price, by the time you settle, your currency has totally moved. Okay. And the transaction has not settled, cannot settle, and you cannot do business. Stablecoin is going to make that better, take away the volatility, create more credibility and more stability. It is going to take away dollarization if we do it well. And this is an important point, and I think that it actually marries the macro policy, which I think the continent is not focusing on. If we don't, as Africa, we now have the Genius Act in America, which regulates US dollar stablecoin. We have the EU MICA, which regulates global European stablecoin, have a basket. Africa needs to come together and create a basket of stablecoin so that the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement can work much faster. A Zambian can trade with an Algerian without knowing what the currency is. And you get stability on both sides and you get trade happening tomorrow morning. That is how our youth are going to get jobs. That's how they're going to be able to grow. But today, I think on the continent, we're looking at the stablecoin emergence, which is a lot, again, about settlement systems. Very difficult for us to have African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement to work. Very difficult for us to create jobs and to have businesses that actually function if we cannot have settlements and payment systems that work. We have $98 billion in remittances that come to the continent. It's more than all of the aid that we have. These remittances are going to start coming to us a lot more on stablecoin platforms. They will come to us on stablecoin platforms that are dollarized, which means that our monetary policies will become irrelevant in many countries, which means that we will go back into non-sovereignty. We would lose our sovereignty as a continent if we are not careful. So it's very important. And the youth are right to use stablecoins to make the remittance transfers because then they save more money. And so we as a continent, I think, need to make sure that a lot of those transfers, the remittance transfers, 98 billion that comes on the continent, goes to support a lot of youth that are trying to start up businesses. And I think we do, again, need for regulation to come in to see that we can make that policy work. So for me, I think we need as a continent to keep our eye a little bit. Like I said, it's 300 billion, 25 million, mostly youth in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ghana, in South Africa. South Africa is a 22 billion stablecoin economy already. It's growing 50% year on year. So soon it will take over our economies, and we do need to understand how it works and make sure that it works well for the youth.
Thank you for that. James, how can the financial sector innovate to provide patient, risk-tolerant capital for the youth, our young entrepreneurs?
Thank you very much. I think huge reforms are required for the financial sector to transform itself, to have patient capital. One is thinking the possibility of bringing commercial pension funds together. Pensions would be the most viable vehicle for funding infrastructure on the African continent. But the experience that they have had, the capacity for them to be able to place and to invest in infrastructure has been limited. But if we get the right policies in our pension space, that will happen. The second one is really incentivizing a financial sector to move away from collateral-based lending to cash flow-based lending. And I think that will require much more than policy because it requires societal reforms. The reason why it doesn't happen in Africa is the question of ethics. People, if they have no commitment into it, they don't pay. So if we could really have incentives that would drive people towards ethical behavior when they borrow, then banks will start lending. The last one is policy from regulators. The financial sector is overregulated, such that banks and financial institutions are denied an opportunity to innovate. Everything is prescribed. This is how to do it. This is how they had to classify your loans. So essentially, the hearts of financial institutions are tied by regulation. But if we change the regulation and it become risk-based regulation and give the freedom to the banks, then chances is we'll see significant innovations. If you look the telecoms, because that space of financial or platforms and fintechs, they have been able to do it because they are not governed by a framework of regulation.
Thank you very much. I think we've run out of time. I'd like to thank my panelists, and thank you all.